Well, while Christian does his thing, he's lighting up. We are flanked. That's an appropriate word, right?
Yes,
flanked.
it is.
You're flanked.
Flanked.
Yep.
Back
Cornered.
here on the Old Fashioned Dad podcast with Katy right here and Stacy over here. Nope, sorry, got that backwards.
That's all right. It's a
Got it
compliment for
backwards.
me.
Got it backwards.
I'll take it.
Okay. Stacy Manning.
Hello.
Katy Faust.
Hey.
And our co-host on the end there, Christian.
Hi guys.
We have a very hot button topic, an old topic, good but needs to be talked about today because it implicates everybody and everything. And so we're going to get into it relatively quick. We're not going to spend too much time on the cigar or whiskey, which that's pretty normal. We're going to drink it in hopes that it fuels the topic and conversation. So
Fuels the fire.
with that said, we're going to get after it right now. We are the Old Fashioned Dad podcast, seeking to love dads and men through the person and work of Jesus Christ, while entering into tough conversations on marriage, mental health, sex, and parenting, all while sipping good whiskey. Okay, before we jump into the topic at hand, anybody else drinking some whiskey? Is it just me?
I'll have some.
You'll have some?
If you
Okay.
pour me
I
some.
want a little for like
Later?
I want the congestion clearing effects.
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
medicinal.
Yes,
she can't actually
medicinal.
drink whiskey without having some
This
kind
is
of
biblical,
legit
right? This
reason.
is Paul
Thank you, sir.
advising somebody to
Timothy,
take a little
to Titus,
take some for
Timothy,
his stomach.
yeah, a little bit of wine helps his
Yes.
stomach, you know.
Yeah.
He was talking anxiety, you know, so. Okay, that's just a.
Thank you.
Yeah, no
Did
more
you-
than that for me. Yes, please, and very little.
Okay.
Do you swish whiskey?
Che-
Like
cheers.
you
You
just
swish
swish
it.
wine?
Yeah, you
okay.
can. You can.
Cheers.
There you go.
Thank you, sir.
What are we drinking?
We
Christian?
are. I was about to get
Yeah,
that. Thank you,
yeah,
Christian.
no
You always
problem.
keep me on track.
Yeah.
We are drinking Few Spirits whiskey,
It's got a great label.
bourbon, right? This is out of Illinois.
Oh, it's pretty smooth. I like that.
That didn't make me cringe.
Yeah.
It's
They
very-
do a good job. They have a couple of different expressions. It doesn't just taste like whiskey, so you get a couple different notes. Vanilla, corn, cotton candy, all that sort of stuff. And then you're smoking something over
Oh,
there.
that's yummy.
Yeah, I am. I don't know what it is, but I think they should use Katie's tagline of that. It doesn't make you cringe.
It doesn't
Yeah.
make you cringe.
I don't feel like
Keep
vomiting.
reaching for it.
Right.
This is a Standard
Better
and
than cough
Twain.
syrup.
It's very tasty.
Standard and Twain cigar. I don't know. It's
Two
like
thumbs up.
number 100 or something like that. A little more dark wrapper. So I'm still hiatus on the smoking. I don't know if I'm coming back to the smoking because now it's been like 2 months. But
Hey,
I'll smoke for you. It's cool.
okay, I don't know.
Sacrifice.
Any rate, so we got a topic at hand today. A little known law or dust up happened in Texas. You all have heard about this.
Yes.
I think. Not, I think it has something to do with CRT or
Well,
I don't know, gender equality. I don't know. What it's on a...
Littering, maybe. Is it a law about littering? Or
Yeah.
is that what Twitter was all fired up about?
Yeah. I know what it was. Abortion.
Abortion.
That's
Abortion.
it.
It's the heartbeat law. Is that the official term for it?
I believe so.
Yeah, heartbeat law, where it's saying 6 weeks can't abort.
after 6 weeks, yes.
After 6 weeks, can't abort. So I got fired up. What was it? Friday evening, late Friday, something like that, or Saturday evening, and I said
Yeah, it was
to the gang here, I was like, we need to talk about this.
Yeah, it was pretty late, but we put together an action plan.
And in true form, all of us being entrepreneurs and business people, we're up late, and we all responded to
true.
it immediately.
It's true.
a late text. It was like 11:30, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and everybody was like, it was like a normal 8 in the morning or something like that. Everybody's like, yeah, let's do this. So we want to talk about abortion, and we want to do so from a biblical view, being foundational in that, and we wanted to have Katy and Stacy on because, well, they co-wrote, as you may remember from previous episode, Then Before Us, which I highly recommend you go out and you purchase immediately and you read immediately.
Or
and
listen.
then
It's
you
on-
leave
it's on Audible
a
too.
5-star positive review immediately. Okay, so the second you hear this, go do that.
Thank you very much.
It won't disappoint.
Go do
It'll
it.
blow your mind.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's actually good.
Ooh.
Excellent. This right here, becoming a global movement. Okay? So why we're talking about this and why we're having them here is, well, Then Before Us is trying to stop, or is aiming to stop, the sacrificing of children on the altar of adult desires. Does that connect with the current topic at hand, the abortion stuff, the ruling, and
I would
what's
say
going on?
Ultimately, abortion is the literal sacrifice of a child because of inconvenience or, disdain or good marketing on behalf of those doing evil. And so it's the issue for children's rights, I think.
Yeah, our book focuses on children's rights to their mother and father, which we recognize in the book is the secondary right that children have, right?
Yeah.
But the primary right children have is the primary right all of us have, and that is a right to life, right?
That's right.
That is the one on which all other rights are going to defend. If you can't do right to life, you have no business trying to do anything else. So we can definitely talk about right to life as a natural right, and thus it should be protected as a legal right.
Yeah.
And thank God there's hundreds and hundreds of organizations that are now fighting for children's right to life. So this is the primary child right. It is the primary human right.
And without which all other rights enumerated don't exist.
Right. Well, and I know we have some, you've jotted down some notes, and I have too. I don't know if you guys have different ideas, but I mean, I think it would be good to start from that natural position, kind of like you guys would do with the book. Like with them before us, you didn't start from a biblical standpoint, even though as Christians, that's where we begin. But even naturally, it's an atrocity. Abortion is an atrocity. So maybe we'll start there then, because it seems pretty obvious as Christians that abortion is antithetical to following God.
Yeah. And I think that Christians need to be able to. So our book that defends children's right to their own mother and father makes the case entirely without scripture, because we're trying to appeal to an audience that does not recognize our authority, which
Right.
is scripture.
Right.
We're trying to appeal to an authority under which everybody must live, and that is the authority of natural law, and that is the authority of legally the Constitution. So I think it's prudent to also make those cases when it comes to abortion, because we want to be able to talk in a common parlance with the people who don't recognize our God and have a compelling secular argument for why they should also defend children's right to life. So I think that's a great idea. And the good news is because our worldview is grounded in reality, because our God is the author of reality, natural law will never contradict biblical truth. They will always be compatible and reinforce one another.
Well said.
Swig.
Swig. Cheers to
Is that the
that.
drinking
I mean,
game?
maybe
After
to start-
everybody says
maybe-
something,
Right.
mic drop-ish,
Yeah.
we better.
I mean, maybe to start off the conversation. I mean, one of the things I was thinking, because how this got on my radar. I mean, I was telling you guys beforehand, like I don't watch the news. It just depresses me. It makes me upset, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe my head's in the sand a little bit. But when I start seeing on social media kind of all these really illogical, memes from my leftist friends, I'm just like, there must be something going on here. I'm seeing this trend of stuff, and one of the. And so when obviously legal abortion's been around since '73, since Roe versus Wade, and it seems like it's had a trajectory from it should be rare and safe to it should be, everyone should have the right to do it at any point in time.
Shout your abortion.
On demand
Celebrate
without
it.
apology.
and celebrate it. Be
Right.
proud of your abortion.
Yeah. Wish you had it.
Right,
According
and it
Lena
seems-
Dunham famously wishes she had an abortion.
Right. Well, and it seems like the big secular, mantra is, hands off my body. Like it's a woman's right. Men, don't have any say in it. It's totally woman's choice. I mean, how do we? I mean, to me, it seems pretty obvious, but I'd like to hear from women. Like why is abortion not about the woman's body?
Well, if it were the woman's body, I mean, it wouldn't be kicking you at 2 a.m. If it were your body, that little bum wouldn't be rolling across your belly.
The hiccups wouldn't wake you up at night.
Right. It's so.
It wouldn't have its own unique DNA.
It is clearly a person.
Right.
And an entirely separate person, because as we as Christians know, children are not born for us. They are born through us.
That's a good point.
We are the vehicle,
Yeah.
and it is it is the one flesh of a marriage. It is the representation, as God would have had it, of the two people becoming one. I look at each of my children, and they are a representation of our our union.
And completely distinct.
Totally. It's
And
kind of
cool.
standard issue.
It's awesome.
And completely distinct, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My daughter came home, I guess it was 3 years ago, after having a conversation with a friend that disagreed with her, because it was when Georgia passed their abortion restrictions, and her good friend said, well, my body, my choice, and my daughter went, and she came home and she said, I haven't heard that before, what do I say? So we spent some time studying embryology, right? Studying like objectively, when do we know what is the life, when life begins, all of that. And ultimately it's clear through through just the sciences that distinct life begins at conception. And the only distinction between that and who you are right now is time, right? That's it. And so it was great, right? It was a great opportunity for us to read, watch some videos, discuss for about an hour or two. And the next time her friend said that to her, my body, my choice, she said, well, if it was your body, you'd be the one that would be dead at the end of the abortion.
Right.
So that's it, right?
And, my body, my choice, the whole choice thing, I'm absolutely pro-choice. And that's the choice that you make to spread your legs and engage in activity that is entirely intended to create children.
Yeah, that's reproductive choice.
That's your choice.
Yep,
that's your choice.
Yeah.
Because the reproduction, my reproductive health is my healthy body and its capability of reproducing. The murder of a child that has been created, that's already been reproduced. There's no reproductive health going on here.
That's right.
This is the result of a choice that you made. And if you wrote a check that you weren't ready to cash, you wrote that check. And abortion is not cost free. I had to have a DNC miscarriage, and my body was obviously couldn't figure out what to do, so I ended up in a surgical bay. It was a very unpleasant experience, and I remember waking up in post-op and just sobbing. And the nurse, she came to me and she said, honey, all the women cry this way.
Wow. Your body knows.
My God. She didn't know whether I'd been there for a DNC or whether I'd been there for an abortion.
Right.
Every woman sobs in that room.
Yeah, it's no accident that God chooses to gestate a baby in the body of a woman.
Right.
And that your hearts are knit together as a result.
That's right. Your baby's DNA is in you for decades.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
They can take your blood and find evidence of your children because you have shared all the things.
Yeah. I don't want to move on from this until we address this. It's a women's issue.
I wanted to jump in on that real quick.
I just don't want to miss it.
Yeah. So when I hear women say my body, my choice, is the message that's being communicated saying like, well, I own this baby and I can do whatever I want with this baby. That piece, and then the other piece, are we then letting men off the hook? Are we creating more of the fatherless epidemic?
Yes.
Well, it's all part of feminism, right? It's which the byproduct is we're going to let guys off the hook and try to make women as irresponsible as men.
So I think it works the opposite direction, right? Feminists see that men can walk away from a pregnancy, but they can't.
Right.
So for them, in their mind, you will never be equal until you're the same.
You can walk away from a
and
pregnancy.
So, we're not equal until I can walk away from a pregnancy too.
Right.
Instead of looking at it the other way and saying, I can't walk away from this pregnancy, therefore, we should insist that men not walk away either.
Right, exactly.
Right? Why doesn't it work that way?
Exactly.
Because that is real equality, where nobody has to die.
Because it should be costly.
Yes.
We're talking about creating a new life, and it's not simply a connection with another human being for 18 years. This is a lifetime commitment.
Yeah. So I once heard Gianna Jessen speak about this. She is a survivor of abortion, right? So she was, they tried to abort her. It was a botched abortion. She has significant disabilities now as a result, right? She is one of the most fierce pro-life advocates out there. And I remember listening to her speak one time, and she said, because it's hard for her to stand at a podium for a half hour, right? I don't know what exactly the disability is, but it impacts her frame and
they tried
her
to
ability
dismember
walk.
her in the
Right,
womb.
right. And I think it was assault.
Chemical.
abortion.
Nice. So they burned her.
They burned her.
To burn her
yeah,
to death.
they burned her. So yeah, so she's got a lot of developmental struggles. But she said, "Men, I am so tired of fighting this alone. I really need you, men. I really need you to start standing up and defending the defenseless." And she's right that this is not a women's issue, right? This is a defending the most vulnerable issue, and men are actually the best at that, right? Especially because in 100% of the cases, men are responsible co-creators of the child that could be sacrificed. So it's absolutely not a women's issue, it's a human rights issue, and all of us need to defend the most vulnerable, especially men who are distinctly wired and gifted at standing up and doing hard things.
And defending the vulnerable also means walking away from the hot chick at the bar who invited you home.
Yep.
Sweet.
100%.
Yes.
You know?
Hot take right there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yep, that's right.
Well, it absolutely infuriates me, especially as a father, that women who are definitely not even mothers, have never even been through the process of giving birth, will then get up there and say, in a very blanket fashion, "Men, you have no say in this." And I'm like, I watched my wife birth my 2 daughters, and that was the role that my wife was in. Like, I can't birth 2 daughters. I can't birth kids.
Right, but she couldn't have a number 1 child that looks just like you.
Right.
Without you.
I watched, and I was there, and I was present. I went through the birthing classes. I went through all the emotional support. I went through all the different relational dynamics, ups and downs that come with the pregnancy. I went through all of that, and to have some woman on the other end who's never been a mom say, "You don't know."
You know what she does? She also doesn't know. It's something we address in our book. That men's testosterone levels drop after the birth of their child for just a long enough period of time so that their wives' bodies can heal.
Yeah,
and
it's
go
amazing.
Again.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not. This is a.
There's a
dual
biological
thing here.
reality everywhere,
Sure.
and it's amazing. Also, the vasopressin increases in men when their wife gives birth to their child. This increased protectiveness and tenderness and belonging,
They're all
and those are mine. Don't
softy
touch them.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It is not intended to be a drive-by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say too, this just cracks me up because you're off the news. I spend way too much time on Twitter. But it's amazing whenever we have these kinds of laws that restrict abortion, immediately people begin to rediscover natural marriage, right? You've got people that are like, "Oh, I see. Okay, well, if women can't get out of a pregnancy, then men, I think we should have laws and expectations that men are going to be with that kid, raise that kid, financially
I'm for
provide
that.
for the
Sure.
kid,
I'm for that.
right?
that
Every
sounds
day
great.
until they're 18.
Oh, so go back to at-fault divorce where it freaking mattered?
I know, and I'm like, you have just rediscovered the original purpose of marriage.
Hello.
That's what we call marriage, right? And conservatives
Yeah.
are like, great idea. Nobody should walk away from
They're being
this.
all facetious, like it's an
Right.
extreme idea. You're like, no, that would actually solve.
No, that's
all
the
of it.
thing. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And that is the reality. I just tweeted this before I got here. Children have a right to life. Children have a right to their mother and father. It does not matter what laws say, right? These natural rights are going to bubble to the surface. And you're never going to be on the wrong side of history when you're on the side of natural rights. So these people that presumably hate marriage, believe in abortion, they reason their way to the natural law conclusion.
Right.
Because it is a truth that lives independently of our social, cultural, and legal norms, right? These are realities that can't be buried.
Sure. Well, and from what I can tell, I mean, the only way someone can, I don't know, be a human and still believe that abortion is not only okay but good, is if you remove the moral element of that baby. You know, and so I mean, you look at that. I mean, any
You have to do some mental gymnastics.
Anytime there's a concerted effort to manipulate language to conceal the truth, that should be a red flag.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you see that in all sorts of politics where they take something that should be morally problematic and they redefine it so that, well, I don't feel so bad. It's just a clump of cells. And it's not really life. And, it's, and redefine it as, woman's health. And why do you hate women if you're not for them to be able to, do this? And you're a terrible human being.
I don't know if it's ignorance, just being disingenuous, or literally never encountering another argument. But we, I think, could pretty easily steelman the case for people who support abortion. We can tell you all the reasons why, that, health of the mother, rape and incest, unprepared, that it would be better for the baby to die than live with a disability. This is a way that we're going to help impoverished children. This is so that women's careers won't be impacted. I mean, I think that we could tell you right now what the argument is that people make for abortion. Very, very rarely do I hear somebody who supports abortion accurately be able to articulate what the pro-life case is, right? It's always in these vagaries and these platitudes.
It's the Handmaid's Tale.
It's the Handmaid's Tale.
Oh
Never do they...
pregnant in the kitchen.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't ever grapple with our actual case, which is this is an independent human life that deserves to be protected, right? They never...
I think the issue, Katie, and I'm sure you know this or understand this, is that you can't combat a emotional argument with a logical one.
Yes.
When you're manipulating language in order to intentionally create something that's not true and then making an emotional argument on that, you can't fight that with, well, let me show you the facts. They're people are too enraged, with the emotive aspect of it. And so it's apples and oranges,
Yeah.
And you're not going to have a productive conversation with anyone if the first thing they come back at you is the rape and incest thing.
Sure.
Right? And so, to the audience, if you ever find yourself in a situation where that's the first, and you will if you discuss this with anyone, when that's the first comeback, I suggest you stipulate that. And really discover whether you're actually having a conversation with someone who's intellectually honest about, hashing it out. If you stipulate that, yes, okay, let's say in rape and incest, those are acceptable times for an abortion. Sure. So taking that off the table, should abortion be legal?
Do you agree with me now that in the other 99% of cases it should never be an option?
Right, and if the answer is no abortion should be illegal, then you walk away.
Right.
That is pearls before swine. It ain't going to happen.
Sure, their argument isn't really their argument.
It's not their argument at all.
They're just throwing that out there.
Right.
Well, and I will say this is one of the, now that we've been doing children's rights crusading for near a decade, I will say that throwing out the exception is the most common tactic, right? So when you're saying, well, children have a right to their mother and father, they benefit from the complementary ways mom's and dad's parents.
What about terrible parents?
Right. Well, it'll be like, okay, so you're saying a child should be left in an orphanage rather than be adopted by a gay couple.
Right.
Right. And so they always go directly to the exception rather than examining the rule. So just be aware of that tactic, right? That they begin with the exception. And I think that we should actually have good responses to the exception. Yeah. But they seek to build law on exceptions, not the rule.
Right.
So I think my train of thought here, it connects with what you guys are talking about. So one thing that I hear quite a bit with the abortion argument is, especially it's aimed directly at Christians, okay? And that is, well, Christians treat immigrants and poor people and other people groups that don't believe what they believe reprehensibly, terribly, and so they're like, well, until you guys can, I think the argument that they're trying to make is until you guys can treat all people well, then abortion should stay on the table.
Sure, so you don't really believe in sanctity of life if it's just this narrow abortion topic.
Right, they're outspoken, no, you have to, because from the secular world, the perspective is Christians care about abortions, or being anti-abortion because they want to be oppressive to women, and we have this, Christians have this track record of being terrible towards all these other people groups.
I think you can boil it down to the...
Yes. Boil it down.
I'll boil it down. The response is, well, are you going to adopt the poor child, right?
And the answer is we do.
We do. But also, even if we're not going to adopt the child, who are you to say that this child born to this poor woman is not going to be the thing that changes her life entirely. That this beautiful flower could not bloom in that kind of adversity. Who are you to white knight it, no color intended, to somebody who you don't know, who you are already assuming doesn't have the capacity to make the decisions about where their life should go. Yeah, crap is going to happen all the time because it's a fallen world and it sucks. But you're not the arbiter of that.
And it amazes me that, this kid's going to have a rough life. The response to that is so kill them.
Right. So murder in the womb
like the
would be less.
rough life.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
Well, and so on the, I hear that all the time of like, oh, okay, well, so the baby's, this mom doesn't want the baby. Well, are you going to adopt him? And the answer is yes. Christians disproportionately outnumber the general population in terms of adopting, and not just getting in line for the long line of white newborn drug-free infants. But when we adopted our son from China, there were 17 of us in our travel group. All of us were adopting older special needs children. About 14 of the families were Christians, and most of them already had children of their own, and so biological children. So this wasn't a case of, oh, this kid's going to meet a need for me. It was I see a child in need, and we are going to bend our life around that child.
Yeah.
So shut up.
Yeah,
shut up with your stupid excuses.
Feel free to stick it.
Yeah.
So another question I have. So with this, my body, my choice, frequent statement. Okay, like when I hear that, I just see petulant child. I just see like it's the epitome of entitlement. But at any rate, are pro-choicers, which I don't even understand pro-choice men, but pro-choicers,
The most unattractive male of all time.
I don't even understand it. But
Do you remember that guy who wrote the blog Bro Choice?
Oh, God.
Right? And he was like,
Oh, my God.
guys,
I need
we've
to
got to
read that.
stand up for abortion. Oh, he deleted it. But not before
Yeah,
we
'cause
got our
we
hands
just
on it.
absolutely slaughtered him.
But he was like,
pro-choice.
do you know
What
what's
in the
going to
world?
happen if this
I think
pro-life
I
law?
drove that one and it was
it was
mean.
pretty much.
Was this
Stacy.
recent?
No, it was like 6 years ago. But he was saying, guys,
It
we
was
have to
juicy.
support abortion because you understand our supply of free sex is going to decrease so greatly
What
if
a
abortion
douchebag.
becomes
Oh, he just came right
unavailable.
out and said it.
Yes.
What
Yes.
honest-
It's like the
what an
quiet
honest
part
man.
out loud.
That's exactly right.
Women won't be as easy.
Yes, if
Holy
they have
smokes.
to deal with
They
the
have to be
consequences of a
responsible.
pregnancy.
Well,
Right.
he's not wrong. He's
He's not wrong.
not
No.
wrong. I mean, he's a
I
douche,
appreciate
but he's not wrong.
I appreciate him saying the quiet part.
He's
out
not
loud.
hiding the ball.
Yeah.
So did we.
So the question I have is like, if we went up to a pro-choicer and just simply said, so really you're all about killing a baby? You're all
Yeah.
like they would vehemently say no.
No.
Right?
No.
So then the question I'm going to pose to you all is like, okay, so are they really only just about killing babies, or is there something else there?
So I actually just saw, and if I had known, I saw something just in the last week about how most people who call themselves pro-choice personally said, I would never have an abortion. I would never have an abortion. So I'm not pro-abortion. I just think that some people should be allowed to have abortions if they want. So I think that speaks to the fact that
So it's
we
coercion?
understand that, I think most people have an understand at a gut level that this is disgusting, damaging, and
Okay.
despicable. But personally, after becoming a reluctant culture warrior, my guess is a lot of this has to do with the fear of isolation and ridicule. That so much of this is if you step out of line of the progressive talking points that are moving to the left at rapid pace, you will find
Light speed.
yourself unfriended,
So your classic
uninvited.
virtue signaling.
yes. But actually there's so much social power in it. And so I don't want to diminish how petrified people are of rejecting the progressive narrative, because it does have real world consequences.
Sure, and to be fair, I'd imagine most of them probably see themselves as having that stance because of compassion.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
because I mean, if you're not a let's say deep thinker, I mean, doesn't seem like it requires a lot of deep thinking, but maybe if you've just kind of accepted the cultural narrative around it, you're thinking, well, yeah, what about those poor women
Right.
in those bad situations?
Right.
Which I mean, you look at the stats, and the poor and minority community are the ones that have so many abortions.
Right.
And you look at don't want to get in a rabbit trail, but you look at Margaret Sanger and her mission.
Right.
It was, eugenics.
She's been successful.
It was eugenics,
Yeah.
It was getting rid of the less fit people, which to her were black people and minorities,
Well, let's talk a little bit about the black community because they absolutely are targeted. They make up 30% of the abortions, even though black women are 6% of the population, right? So they're much more likely to
There's
get an
some
abortion.
inequality right there.
Yeah, you want to talk about systemic
They make up 30%
racism?
of the abortions, and
Right.
they only comprise 6% of the population.
Right. So they
Isn't that
are
atrocious.
Oh my
And
God.
there's been a lot of attention given, rightly so, to high maternal death rates and complications in black women and pregnancies. And of course, the narrative is that it's because of a systemically racist medical system.
Yeah.
But those rates of failed pregnancies, maternal death during pregnancy correspond almost exactly to the increased rates of abortion in minority communities.
Right, because they're scrambling up your parts.
Yeah.
I mean, your uterus is
Right.
it can only take so much abuse.
It's not made to have babies sucked out of
Scar
them.
tissue
Right.
and damage and all of the terrible things that can happen as a result of,
Yeah. Yeah, a month ago I heard pastor, and maybe he's a doctor also, Hoy, H-O-Y, an amazing pro-life advocate, black man, and his wife speak at a conference, and he said, black children for the last 10 years are being born way below replacement rate. Really what is going on with abortion especially is the extinction of the black race in America. Statistically, nobody has had this kind of replacement rate in their race and ever been able to overcome it. So what abortion is doing is
That is
exterminating the black race in America.
total tragedy.
Planned
Right.
Parenthood's mission has been successful.
That's
Right.
exactly right. Not just individual babies, but they're actually going to, unless you're talking about immigrant communities, Native or genuine African Americans will be mostly extinct in another 50 or 60 years.
Well, I mean, speaking of another 50 or 60 years, I mean, I'm thinking about this, and I think, our generation before us, the 70s generation that allowed, Roe versus Wade to happen, I think abortion is our slavery. I think
Yeah.
50, 100 years, people are going to look back and be like, what sort of civilization not only allowed the extinction of millions of babies, but encouraged it and celebrated it as good?
It's also right where the pin is dropped for the rancor in our society today, that 9 justices took away the opportunity to fight it out in our
State by state.
states. Right. It makes the counterpart the enemy, and it was made that by somebody else because they took our power away to say no, not here, not in my house.
Right. Yeah. So
What are you talking about specifically? You're talking about the Supreme Court's
I'm talking about Roe
ruling
versus
on-
Wade. I
okay,
think
yeah.
that was really where the social discord
Sure.
really started.
Sure, on the tales of feminism. Yeah.
Can I respond to your
No.
like the slavery comment that you made?
Sure.
Yeah. So, you're saying 100 years, 50 years, civilization then will look back on us now and go like,
Just like
what?
we do with slavery, like what
Right.
the hell?
Right. So going back and doing some quick research through the Old Testament, we have examples where nations and even the Israelites started literally physically sacrificing babies to the
Molech.
god Molech. And I had to I wanted some sort of visual image. I really wish I didn't do the research on it. But literally this cow bull looking anamorphic creature statue, who knows how tall it stood, but at the base of its belly it's cut open to be an oven, and then the priest or whatever would literally come and put the live baby in the fire. And I was like, what in the world? And
that's mild. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
literally.
Yeah.
And
I'm mild in terms of my response is what the F?
Yeah. What the is right?
Right.
Okay. So, but I was like, okay, why? Why were they doing this?
Because children are their utter value, their total value, and inherently we look at them as the potential, right? So what's the most valuable thing that you can sacrifice to a God but a child?
Well, and we know when we as Christians we look at the spiritual world, like there's angels, there's demons, and so we look at it and we go like, all right, God, Moloch, demon, self-interested, wants us to destroy the most, one of the most valuable things in our lives. Okay, so this civilization, and this is coming back to your point, Christian, of like, people 50 years from now are going to look at us and go like, why were you aborting? We look at that and go like, what in the fuck are you doing?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're literally putting a live baby inside of this oven that looks like a bowl, and you're sacrificing, and the reasons why. So here's this one, 2 reasons. They had blessing in agriculture. Largely agricultural community. This one literally is insane and makes no sense. The second one is that they have blessing in having fertility.
There. I listened to a
What?
missionary.
Yeah, sacrifice children for children.
Yes. I listened to a missionary talking about being. Is it Haiti where voodoo?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in the darkest places, the overwhelmingly sad places were the places where they still were killing their firstborn children in order to
Have more children.
And the sadness of the women and the lack of joy that they experienced in their second-born child was so palpable, because their motherhood will always be associated with the slaughter of their firstborn child.
crazy.
We look at that and we're like,
Today.
those cycle backwards people.
Right.
But I believe it was National Public Radio that just this week profiled erroneously, we have this concept of, well, most of the women that get abortions are young women that just want to make it through school.
Sure,
And
they had no other options.
they're disadvantaged, this is going to get in the way. And they're like, but actually, lots of women who already have children choose to get abortions for the sake of loving the children they have better. Now, first
I've
of
heard
all,
that one.
right, they've disputed
Yeah.
that statistics, and they're like, no, it really is women who are unsupported by the boyfriend or father of their child who feel pressured into this. So that demographic of women who have children already getting abortions is slight. But yes,
because they know.
yeah, but there is this desire to be like, oh, they got the abortion because they love children. Right. No.
How twisted.
Right. So, I mean, same kind of concept as Molech. So.
And how is it any different? It goes back to, it seems like every time we chat, we talk about the hubris of our current, time. That how is the blender and the vacuum in the surgical bay really any different?
Than the furnace.
It's just new technology.
Right.
Or just a new way to snuff out that
Harder
life.
to hear the kids scream.
I mean,
Right, it's a little cleaner because we don't actually know them.
the baby is still dying in the belly of something.
yeah.
Well, and that kind of goes back to my point about the manipulation of the language to obscure the reality of what's happening.
Right.
I mean, I don't have the numbers, but I know that a lot of pregnancy centers, specifically Christian ones, they've got really high success rates in helping women choose life over killing the baby when they get a visual of this is your baby, this is actually the life that's growing inside you. It's not
Because
just a clump of cells.
Just the same reason that we have lost so many of our cultural battles is because there's a story being told there. You can actually put a face to the emotions. And see it as a real person. There's a narrative behind a picture of that story.
So you call it, we're going to look back on abortion the way we look back on slavery, being horrified. When we used to blog, we did a post about this called Abortion is America's Holocaust. And so these things all have something in common. And what is it? All of these atrocities, these human rights violations, are predicated on diminishing the humanity of the group that you want to enslave or oppress or eradicate. And so that certainly happened with our black countrymen during slavery, right? They were deemed less than human, chattel. That happened with the Jews, where they begin to talk about them in terms of well, these are parasites, they are an inferior race. And it absolutely happens in our conversations about abortion, right? This is a clump of cells, it's my body, my choice, always diminishing the personhood. In fact, there is an entire school of legal thought that says, well, it's human. We can't argue with the fact that it's human because you cannot make a scientific argument that this is not human.
Right.
But is it a person.
Right.
It's a human, but not a person, right? So they're divorcing humanity and personhood. And as soon as you do that, you can do anything you want
Like
with
people
that
do
life.
with gender and biological sex.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Sure.
That's right. You're gonna. So all human rights violations, gross, widespread human rights violations, it is necessary to demonize, demote, and dehumanize whatever group it is that you want to oppress.
Sure. Well, I mean, speaking of human rights, I mean, I've more recently, I've listened to some of the, like even on Friday, the Supreme Court basically, made a ruling, a statement saying we're not going to stop, this. But the dissenting opinion was it's unconstitutional. The abortion is a constitutional right.
That's
And like
nuts.
you say it enough and people start believing it.
Right.
Nuts. There's
Like,
absolutely.
I read the Constitution, no mention of abortion in there.
Emanations
Roe versus
and
Wade is not part of
penumbras
the
and
Constitution.
Privacy.
Right.
Like, what about the privacy of the baby?
Right.
You
So-
know?
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess the question in that that I'm thinking is, as Christians specifically, how do we address the two different aspects of what's legal and what's right? Because
I think-
it's legal to kill your baby with no questions asked. But obviously, as Christians, we believe that's abhorrently wrong.
Well, we need to first address the problem of federalism and the fact that the power was taken away. You can have whatever opinion that you want of the legality of abortion. Roe versus Wade is shit law, and no matter how important you think it is, shit law should not stand. We need to bring the power back to our states, and California will never make abortion illegal. Washington, I mean,
Never happened.
right up until the day of birth,
Sure.
buy one, get one free.
Right.
Seriously, I mean, the people in these states, it's a freaking death cult, right? This will never change here. And that's really the way it's always supposed to work, because you want to know that you're living around death cult. To have a blanket, across the nation. Gay marriage was the same way. So many states had already made decisions as to how they wanted to go about protecting or redefining marriage. And that was another, death swing.
We decide for you, you
Yeah.
little peasants.
Yeah, we know better.
Right.
So what you're talking about is the trend over the last 100 years of removing power from the local authorities and states and having a blanket
Federalizing
statement,
it.
federalizing the law.
And what makes me angriest in this life? When I feel powerless, when I don't think that I can have any effect on
Well, then
the
you're like,
horrible
why
things.
bother?
Why bother? Exactly.
Yeah.
You've
who
got no
cares?
hope and you don't want to do
Right.
anything, and
Right.
you don't think that doing anything's going to have an effect.
Right. The closer it is, the more power that you have.
Right.
So that, as Christians, first we need to educate our fellow countrymen about the fact that if Roe versus Wade is overturned, it simply returns to the states to decide.
Right.
It's not like abortions will be illegal.
Yeah. And what I think about the Colson Center, when they talk about this issue, they often say, the goal of Christians is not to just make abortion illegal, it's to make it unthinkable.
Right.
Okay, so that's our goal. And that is going to happen through primarily humanizing the child, emphasizing their rights, and insisting, like we do in the book, so abortion is the original them before us issue. Okay, so them before us is the idea of them, the children, before us, the adults.
Yep.
Okay, children's rights need to come before what adults want. We have seen that so starkly in the abortion debate,
Yep.
where abortion is driven by what adults want, despite the fact that you will violently snuff out a child's right so an adult can live as they please.
Right.
That is also happening in the marriage and family debate, where children are being forced to lose their rights to their own mother and father so adults can configure their romantic life and household in a way that suits them rather than in a way that
That is best for the
yes.
child.
And so what is a Christian supposed to do? We need to make this kind of child sacrifice in both of these arenas, but primarily in the abortion debate, since we're talking about today, unthinkable, right? We have to focus on the humanity of the child. We have to articulate well and defend their rights. We need to know more about this than everybody else, right? We need to study embryology. We need to equip our children. We need to be able to answer all of the objections. We need to know the stats about rape and incest. We need to use the kind of tactics of saying, okay, well, let's talk about this. And so what about this other 99%, right? We actually need to be the most capable, valiant, and courageous children's rights defenders that people are going to run up against. And that's how we make it unthinkable. Okay, not by just being social media crusaders that think that one-liners are going to do it, right? And then we also need to live it, right? One of the very few places I think that you're actually going to find people with Down syndrome is in churches, right? There's not a lot of Down syndrome babies outside of church nurseries these days. I know the moms who have had those babies. That was a really challenging diagnosis for them. But they understood that I don't make this kid pay with their life just because this means that it's going to be harder for me. It does mean that we go out and we find and bring unwanted children into our home. It does mean that we let single mothers stay in our house until they find a place that's secure for them. It does mean that we offer free babysitting to moms and dads who are doing the hard thing and not making children sacrifice for them, even though they're in a difficult spot. So, that's what the way forward looks like for Christians, and it is absolutely independent of what the law says.
Oh, amen.
Sure.
The more laws that are just immoral, the more criminal I become.
Yeah.
So I mean, Katy, it sounds like to put a fine point on it, you're saying it's going to take a Christian community to come around these women and families that are making the hard choice to choose life over the convenience of over convenience.
And that's the solution to all child sacrifice issues. That's the solution to all, are we going to defend children's rights or not? The solution is the same, no matter whether you're talking about abortion or single parenthood or seeking a no-fault divorce when things get challenging, or dealing with infertility, or whatever it is. The solution is always the same, and that is adults do hard things. That is the answer.
Right.
Adults need to do hard things so children do not become the sacrifice.
And not falling into the well, they just don't know better. They're just poor, ignorant, and stupid. It's just elitist and arrogant.
It's the bigotry of low expectations.
It totally is.
The prevailing culture of Seattle is what you're saying, and any other liberal cesspool. Yeah,
pretty
I got
much.
it.
Yeah, it's the hallmark of progressivism.
Sure.
Right?
Elitist.
Well, these people can't stop using drugs, so we need to give them needles.
Right.
Right. Well, these poor women, these
we can't
brown
have
women.
expectations.
Yeah, these brown women can't raise those children.
They're not smart enough to realize that if their actions have consequences, and it's going to be a really rough decade.
Yeah.
They're just not smart enough. They're not going to get it. So we can't actually make changes that will improve everyone's life, that will hold men to a higher expectation and take more responsibility for their, where they're putting it. Because they're lesser, you see.
Sure.
Yeah.
But Katy, I've seen so much recently where politicians and even some Christians are both pro-life and pro-choice. Can't Christians be duplicitous?
Maybe.
Oh,
it is duplicitous.
A dichotomy.
That's for sure.
They're not Christians.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well.
You cannot be frankly, you cannot be a Democrat and be a Christian.
Hot
if
take.
you
Whoa.
Hot
if
take.
you fill in that little bubble, there's a big fat D next to it. As Dan Bongino is so good at saying, Republicans are not your friends, but Democrats are at the root of most of your problems. There is no way that a legit Christian who actually believes and follows Jesus and knows that they're going to have to answer to God when this ride is over, who actually votes for someone who would keep abortion.
Facilitates.
And it's part of the plank.
Yeah.
It is a major issue of prominence for the Democrat Party.
Featured highly in their platform.
You just can't do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
It's gone from acceptable and rare to this is something Democrats are going to die on.
Right.
They're pro
Celebrated.
in the streets.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Light up all of the buildings in New York pink.
I listen to a lot of talking heads, and Andrew Klavan had some really interesting thoughts on why we're doing this to children, and I thought it's good enough to share because he's brilliant. Why the trans thing? Why has the abortion gone from safe, legal, and rare to shout my abortion?
On demand without apology.
Yes, and it is because we are a post-Christian society. This is not, treating children in this way is not new.
Right.
It's what always was
right.
up until Jesus. And it was Jesus and Christianity that changed the whole game.
Yeah.
And as we progress, which is regress,
Right.
we are back to sacrificing children. We have them dancing in drag, getting dollar bills from gay men in clubs in New York, and it's celebrated. We're mutilating children. Doctors who take an oath to do no harm are cutting off healthy breasts of young women for money.
Yeah. Well, so, and honestly, why is that? Because our God is self, right? Our God, these days especially, is grounded in our identity, almost always our sexual identity and our sexual desires. And so now children simply become objects to forward and validate those expressions,
And
right?
And you know, I might be going on a bit.
Weird.
No.
Right.
That never
Don't do that,
happens.
Stacy.
Also, the my body, my choice thing, and I think you brought this up earlier on paper, and you maybe didn't bring it up here, but it was a good point. Is it my body? Is it the child's body? No.
Yeah.
It is the vessel that God has intended for you to experience this life. It is an expression of your spirit, and I think we went over this last time. It is an expression of your soul, and it is to facilitate, but you don't actually own it. What do you own? You own the things that you labor for and possess. The body, your body is entirely different
Sure.
than a possession.
Sure. I did not buy my body. I'm not, to a large extent, in control of the genetics that make up my
Right.
physical being.
You are a steward of this.
Sure.
Yeah, it's been largely quiet here, so I'm going to jump in.
I've been talking a lot.
Just this once.
Thank you. Appreciate it. This topic and this discussion of abortion really does implicate ownership and stewardship. And when it comes to ownership, nobody owns anything.
Right.
Nobody owns anything. Okay,
You're saying as Christians.
From the
we're
Christian
stewards.
from the
perspective.
Christian
Yes.
biblical
Yep.
perspective, nobody owns anything.
Right.
Okay, we are stewards of time. We are stewards of our giftings and our talents. We are stewards of our physical bodies.
Right.
We
Stewards
are
of our kids.
stewards
Right.
of
Right.
our kids, our property, of our thought processes, our relationships. We don't own any of that.
Right.
And so when it comes to this issue of my body, my choice, it really is a misunderstanding of ownership versus stewardship.
Absolutely.
100%. And then coming back to this point you were making, like about we need to see children. We need to humanize.
Right.
We need to humanize children. I'm gonna say this right out to. I know most of our listeners are Christian and have some sort of framework of Jesus Christ being Lord and Savior. You cannot get a more humanistic view of children outside the person and work of Jesus Christ. If you can go and try, and you're not going to find it. Okay, so Jesus gives us definition. Jesus gives us meaning. Jesus empowers us to actually see children as people, not objects, as human beings, not property. And now we have lots of human history that says, wow, people have done a lot of sinful things. That's on us. That part, that is sin, that is deceit and corruption. God did not tell us to go and do deceitful, bad, murderous things. We did that out of our own hearts, and then we have a King and Savior and God that comes in and says, wow, you guys can't change. I love you. I'll die for you. So that you don't have to do the aborting things, because we don't want to abort children emotionally. We don't want to abort children relationally, and we don't want to abort children physically.
Right.
And the only way that is going to be done is by actual submission and worship of Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. You guys can disagree, not you guys. You guys can disagree with me all day long.
But you're disagreeing with God.
Boom.
So, this is so good. I think this whole thing about like children were treated as property, treated as objects, misused, abused, right? This is the norm through human history.
Right.
And why is it not that way? And I would say even before Christ, right? There is no human rights without the biblical worldview, right? Like, I think it's Dennis Prager who says, you know, in terms of human rights, the most important words ever uttered was, "Let us make man in our image," right? Because we are made in the image of God, therefore, that is the foundation for philosophical human rights, certainly the basis for human rights when it comes to our Constitution and our laws and all of the great philosophical thinkers. But there is something that says that other people deserve protection and dignity, not because they're part of my tribe, not because I can get something from them, but because they are made in the image of God. He endowed them with value and dignity. Therefore, and all throughout the Old Testament, and obviously in our laws too, therefore people deserve protection, right? So it cracks me up, you know, that people think that you can arrive at those conclusions without the biblical worldview. You can't. All you can do is regress.
And this is vastly important what you're saying, because we're talking about, and I've used this term so much on this podcast, and if you don't know what it means, I'm not going to tell you. Well, I will tell you. Imago Dei, like made in the image of God. For a long time, I didn't understand why murder was wrong. I followed it because, like, well, it didn't feel right to kill somebody, right? But
sometimes it does.
Sometimes it feels right.
But murder's wrong. Like, if you go out and ask somebody today, like, well, why is murder wrong? Somebody that doesn't necessarily, I mean, it could be a Christian, but somebody that doesn't believe in God, why is murder wrong? More often than not, they're going to say, well, it just is. They know in their heart that it's wrong, but they can't articulate why it's wrong. Here's why it's wrong. Because every single one of us bears the likeness of our Creator, which is God, Jesus Christ, and you're literally killing an image bearer of the Creator God.
Right.
Okay? Like, there doesn't need to be any more explanation of that. There doesn't need to be any more, like, here's the other 4 reasons or 10 reasons as to why, you know, murder is wrong. So we're made in the image of God. We're made to bear the image of God, and we're made to behave like God. And so honestly, when we have civilization that is willing to say, yeah, let's go ahead and sacrifice, what was the stat since 1973? Like 43 million?
42 million.
Something like that, 42 million. And that's just from 1973, and that's just the ones that have been reported.
That's the legal ones that have been reported.
Right.
Okay? Yeah. And that's not even counting in any other forms of child sacrifice that have happened throughout human history since the dawn of time. Okay. So when we have this permissiveness, speaking to you viewers and listeners, when we have this permissiveness towards we are God in our life and we decide what is right, you have a breakdown of civilization. Okay? You can go all the way back to the Noahic covenant where God came down and was like, wow, civilization is really bad. Everybody's doing everything that they want and it's all bad all the time.
Yeah.
All bad all the time. I need to wipe everybody out. Noah says, well, hold on. And God says, I'll start with you. But God wipes everybody out. Why? Because that civilization got to a level where everybody did what they wanted. And guess what happens when everybody does what they wanted and God is not at the center? It's bad.
Yeah.
It literally is bad.
You get to the point there where might makes right. That is the only right, is can you get it? Can you take it?
Sure.
And who pays for that? Always the weaker, always the most vulnerable, almost always women and children.
Always
Absolutely.
women and
Right.
children.
Always.
Always.
Well,
in an
Yeah.
honest humanist, you know, who doesn't believe in God, will say that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really believe in Darwinian evolution, if you've got the power, you have the means,
Yeah,
you are
fight it
top of
out.
the food chain.
Yeah.
I mean, there is nothing logically, if you don't have God
Right.
to provide for the weaker of the, why would you?
Why would you?
You know, it's just natural that they
Yeah.
don't deserve to live because they don't have the
Yeah.
resources.
If they're in the way of what you want.
Yeah, it's brutal.
So I would really encourage you, viewers and listeners, to really do some soul searching on this, because if you don't know Jesus, who we are talking about, but in your heart you're like, I don't think abortion's right, or I really want to advocate for children, that's not by accident. That does not exist because one day you had a morality change. Like, that is God working in your life. And I would encourage you, if you've never prayed to God, spend some time, 5 minutes, pray to God, like, hey, God, I've never prayed to you. this is a weird feeling that I have. Like, I want to advocate for kids. I just really don't feel like abortion is right. I'm having a hard time standing up, amongst my family and my peers. Can you please speak to me, give me wisdom and discernment? You literally use those words. I'm giving you this as a model of prayer. Prayer does not need to be complicated. But if you have this pull in your heart,
even if you don't,
even if, and I'll get to that point, if you have this pull in your heart, pray about it. Now, if you're staunchly the other way and somehow you're listening to the Old Fashioned Dad podcast, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah, right? You have good taste, obviously.
Yeah, well done. But if you're the other way and you're like, yeah, absolutely, it's a woman's right to choose, even though I had kids, and
just make sure that 50% of the women in the womb get a right to choose at some point.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that was another point. Anyway, but if you're the other way, I would really encourage you to do some soul searching on this, because abortion is murder. There is no way to classify it as anything else, and to say that it's reproductive rights is confusing the issue and reducing the issue. Okay, so abortion is murder, and you're literally killing an image bearer of God, and you're killing future women. Stop that. Okay,
Yes.
Future women. You're killing future women. Stop it. Okay, dads, men. Okay, men. Okay, stop around. Okay? Keep it in your pants. All right? Do not go get engaged with the hot girl at the bar unless you're ready to put a ring on her finger, provide for the kid that you're going to make that happens because of sex. Sex happens, kids happen. All right? That is that. Because science.
Yeah.
Because science, right? Okay. Dudes, knock it off.
And have the respect. Like, you really have so much of the power. Men, yes, women have a lot of the power. And we are the gatekeepers for the sex. But if we say yes, it's your job to say no.
So you talk to the men. Let me talk to the ladies.
Please.
Okay. I became a Christian when I was about 16, and I was still an idiot for several years after that. And I've slowly lost some idiocy as the years have gone by. But when I was a high schooler, I wanted guys' attention, and I didn't care. I didn't care if it made them stumble, what I wore. I wasn't out having sex, but I really loved egging them on, and I liked the attention, and I liked to see how far I could push things, and all of that.
I believe they call it a tease.
Yeah, I was a total tease. Okay, and and then I had to learn something that has proved true, and I've checked with other women. What I wanted so much was to be desired.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted. I wanted to be pursued, and I wanted to be desired. And at the time, I was such a foolish girl that I didn't care how close to the line I got, what it was doing to different guys to achieve that desirability. And then I discovered something after I became a Christian, and that is that if I say no, the desirability goes up. And if I said yes, the desirability would go up for a very short time and then drop off. And so I think women are made to be pursued and desired, right?
Yes.
God wired it in us.
Yep.
And the way to get him to actually pursue you, and a helpful way to weed out the guys that you don't want around anyway, is to say no to just about everything, right? If they want to sleep with you, say no. And they're either going to go, bye, or they're going to go,
Oh my God, she's
who
the
are
sexiest
you?
thing I've ever
Yeah,
seen.
that's
That.
exactly
Right.
right.
Right there.
That's
Right.
exactly right.
And that's our job. We get one egg a month.
That's right.
We are intended to be discerning.
Selective.
One egg.
They get about
Billions.
400 million sperm a month. You get one egg, right? So your body itself are telling you that you need to be very discerning
Right.
about who you give access to,
Right.
right? You want to make sure that it's a guy that has devoted his entire life to you in front of your family and friends, because when that one egg encounters one of those 4 million sperm, or, throughout the year, whatever, okay, billions and billions, okay, that baby deserves you, that baby deserves him, and that baby deserves you loving him.
And you also deserve to sleep at night.
Yeah.
costs women to go into the surgical bay and wake up sobbing.
Yeah.
That's costly because you know you have done something that can never be undone. You will never know that child. And someday, assuming that the abortion that you went through is redeemed, someday in heaven you will meet that child. And that's really serious business.
Any final thoughts?
I got nothing.
Okay.
I got nothing.
I'm going to say one final thing, coming right back to the men. Men, you need to respect women. I cannot emphasize that anymore. Please go look up a definition of respect. I think Webster's dictionary is not too far off. You need to respect women. You need to love women. Okay? And I'm going to be really blunt here. You cannot see women as a receptacle to dump your sperm into.
That's right.
You cannot do that. Absolutely cannot do that. We would not necessarily be on this abortion topic if you weren't doing that. So, respect and love women and treat each woman as an actual human being, not a garbage can.
Well said.
I guess I do have one thing to say.
Okay.
On what you were saying earlier, you're talking about if you're feeling convicted, you don't know what to do with it, pray about it, accept Jesus. If you don't have anyone in your life that is safe for you to voice your concerns with, DM us. I mean, we're not in a position to save you, but we can pray for you. We can point you in the right direction. We can hopefully help and encourage you as you're walking in that journey.
And ladies, the two of you that are watching this, if you're in that place where you had an abortion, here's what I know. I haven't had one, by God's mercy, even though I had a scare when I was in high school. God will never, in God's hands, your greatest weaknesses and your greatest suffering will never go to waste. Okay? If you've had an abortion and if you feel guilt and shame over that, you can go to God, right? You can tell him everything. He can redeem you and make you white as snow. And then you take that hardship, you take that loss, you take that failure, you put it at the foot of the cross. And God says, thank you, my beautiful daughter. And then he hands it back to you in the form of a weapon.
That's right.
That the darkness can never overcome. Okay? And God will he will not waste any of your tears and he won't waste any of your suffering. Instead, he is going to turn you into a pioneer shepherdess that is going to be able to illuminate and show the path forward for so many other women who are suffering.
Amen. Well, men, women, moms and dads, husbands and wives, please take heed of everything that was said today. This was a brilliant conversation, and every mind here is a genius. Listen. At any rate, we love you. Like Christian said, please DM us, connect with us. We'd love to pray for you. Even reach there. These two are on social media.
Oh yeah.
Instagram, Katy and Stacy. Just put in their names. Please go check out them before us. Okay.
It's a brilliant book.
There is a lot of great content in there that helps you formulate a better opinion on children's rights, because that is what we're trying to do. We're trying to be more global in the focus around children's right than necessarily singularly focused simply on abortion. Just abortion's a big deal, a big topic, but we are looking to be very broad and take over the world with children's rights.
Yep.
So check out that. We got some resources for you, some couple of blogs. We'll put in the notes for you guys to take a look from a couple different sources, CCF and Desiring God. I thought some of those had some good points in there. At any rate, we love you. Take care. Please pray to God.
Notice that Biden watch check at the end there, Stacy.
I totally did.
Wow.
It's freaking
Wow.
Texas, man.